It was a perfectly average Friday night. The broadcast was running smoothly, perhaps too smoothly. We were in that comfortable, predictable rhythm that settles in midway through a show. The champion had retained her title earlier, cutting a dismissive promo about the lack of competition, her words echoing with a familiar arrogance. The next match was being set up, a standard contenders bout that felt like necessary filler. The crowd was engaged, but not electric. They were waiting for the main event, politely applauding the competitors they were given, their energy simmering at a low boil. The commentators recycled familiar phrases, hitting their cues, talking about momentum and making a statement. In the production truck, coffee was being poured. Backstage, talent scrolled through their phones, waiting for their segments. It was, in every sense of the word, just another night at the office. We all thought we knew the script. We thought we understood the boundaries of this world, the rules of the narrative we tuned in to watch. We believed that if something big was going to happen, we would have heard the whispers. We would have sensed the change in the air. But the air was still, and the story felt safe. That was the illusion. That was the trap. We had forgotten that the most profound changes don't announce their arrival. They simply happen, tearing the ordinary fabric of the expected clean in two. We were comfortable. And then, we weren't. It started not with a bang, but with a flicker. The massive arena screens stuttered. A high-pitched feedback whine cut through the commentary, forcing the announcers to clutch their headsets. The crowd's gentle hum paused, replaced by a collective questioning silence. Then darkness. A total blackout, swallowing the arena whole. It lasted for 1 second, 2 seconds, long enough for thousands of people to draw a single unified breath. And then, the sound hit. It wasn't just music. It was a memory, a shattered chord of glass, a defiant bass line that hadn't been heard in these arenas for nearly a decade. The reaction was not a cheer. It was an explosion. It was a physical, seismic event. The sound of 10,000 people realizing the impossible was happening at the exact same millisecond. The hard cam, mounted on the steel rig, visibly shook from the vibration. This wasn't manufactured. It was visceral. This wasn't a planned pop. It was a shockwave of raw, unbridled disbelief. The company hadn't planned this. The producers hadn't cued this. The rumors weren't just wrong, they hadn't even existed. Smoke billowed on the ramp, but the light stayed low, showing only a silhouette. But we didn't need to see her. We knew. She was back. And the world had just tilted on its axis. The music faded. The silhouette didn't move. She just stood there, a specter at the top of the ramp, letting the noise wash over her. The arena lights slowly rose, but they weren't the vibrant blues and reds of the show. They were a stark, sterile white, as if the technical crew themselves were scrambling, defaulting to the brightest setting they could find. In the ring, the current champion, the woman who had been dismissing all competition just moments before, was frozen. Her championship belt, usually held high with such pride, seemed to hang limply in her hand. Her face, usually a mask of confident disdain, was pale. It wasn't fear we saw. It was something deeper. It was the look of someone seeing a ghost. The icon took 1 step forward. The crowd erupted again. She took another. She wasn't wearing ring gear. She was wearing street clothes, jeans, and a simple black jacket, as if she had walked right in off the street, right out of the myth she had become. She wasn't marching to the ring. She was reclaiming territory. The champion, the Titan, finally found her footing. She raised the title, not as a threat, but as a shield. The icon just stared, her expression unreadable from a distance. The camera zoomed in and we saw it. A single tear cutting a path through the dust on her cheek. In the gorilla position, the space just behind the curtain, chaos reigned. The head of production was screaming into his headset, his face crimson. "Who cleared this? Is this ours? Cut the music! Cut her music!" But the technicians were frozen, staring at their monitors, their hands hovering over the boards. The directive, "WWE didn't see this coming," wasn't just a tagline, it was the literal truth. Security guards, trained for fans jumping the barricade, looked at each other in confusion. How do you stop someone who belongs here but isn't supposed to be here? Agents were sprinting down hallways. The boss, watching from a private office, reportedly threw his headset against the wall. This wasn't just a deviation from the script, it was a hostile takeover of the narrative. This one moment had rendered the entire creative plan for the next 6 months completely irrelevant. Phone lines lit up with calls from the network, from advertisers, from executives demanding answers that no one had. The talent scheduled for the next segment were told to stay put. The referees were given no instructions. The show had ground to a halt, held hostage by a single presence. The machine, for the first time in memory, had been broken. And the ghost was now in the center of the ring, asking for a microphone. To understand the shaking camera, you have to understand the silence she left behind. She wasn't just another star. She was the architect. She was the one who built the foundation that the current revolution was standing on. And when she left, it wasn't a celebration. It wasn't a happy retirement with confetti and a standing ovation. She had vanished. One day she was the center of the universe, and the next she was gone. The official story was burnout. The whispers were betrayal. She had walked away quietly while injured, refusing to sign a new restrictive contract. The company had tried to erase her. They stopped mentioning her name, removed her from video packages, and built new icons to take her place. But you can't erase a foundation. The Titan, the current champion, had built a formidable legacy, but it was always compared to hers. She was the unspoken metric. The Titan was the greatest of this era. The icon was the greatest of all time. Her return wasn't just a surprise, it was a reckoning. It was the physical embodiment of unresolved history. She was the chapter everyone had been forced to skip, and she had just walked back into the room, refusing to let the story continue without her. The past was no longer in the past. It was in the ring, and it was demanding its turn to speak. It took less than 45 seconds. The first shaky fan footage, filmed vertically from the upper deck, hit the internet before the broadcast cameras had even settled. The clip was chaos, just noise, blurred lights, and the sound of a man screaming, "No way, no way!" But it was enough. The platforms melted down. "She's back!" trended worldwide, eclipsing global news, sports championships, and movie premieres. It wasn't just wrestling news, it was cultural news. Websites that hadn't covered the sport in years suddenly had media analysts breaking down the return. Was it a work? Was it real? The lines blurred until they ceased to matter. The company's carefully curated social media accounts, which had been posting graphics for the next match, went completely silent. They had no approved image, no tagline, no narrative to spin. They had lost control. For a brief, terrifying moment, the fans, the media, and the ghost on the ramp were writing the story. The official PR team, usually so adept at framing reality, could only issue a cold, sterile statement. "We are aware of the incident during the live broadcast of SmackDown." An incident. They called her an incident, but the world knew better. This wasn't an incident. This was a resurrection, and it was happening live, in front of everyone, whether the powers that be wanted it to or not. The moment the camera cut to a commercial break, a panicked, sudden decision, the backstage monitor room became a pressure cooker. The roster was split. The younger talent, the ones who grew up with her posters on their walls, were huddled together, many in tears. To them, this was a miracle. The woman who inspired them to start this journey had just validated their entire world. It was proof that legends never truly die. But on the other side of the room there was a cold, hard silence. The veterans, the main eventers, and especially the Titan, felt a different kind of chill. This wasn't an inspiration, it was a threat. This one return, this wave of pure nostalgia, could erase a year's worth of their hard work, their storylines, their title reigns, their sacrifices. All suddenly felt small. The Titan felt the championship in her hand grow heavy. It was no longer her title. It was the title the icon had just returned for. A rift formed in that room. It was the past versus the present. Gratitude versus ambition. The ones who wanted to shake her hand and the ones who wanted to protect their spot. The icon hadn't even spoken a word, and she had already shattered the fragile ecosystem of the locker room. The show ended in chaos. She never spoke. After the standoff, as the champion retreated, the icon simply stood in the ring, absorbing the noise before walking straight back out, disappearing into the crowd. She bypassed Gorilla, bypassed the executives, and was in her rental car before security even knew she had left the building. The drive to her hotel was silent. The adrenaline faded, replaced by the hollow, ringing echo of the crowd. She pulled over, the city lights blurring through her windshield. She picked up her phone. Her hands were shaking. She dialed. A voice answered, sleepy and concerned. "Mom? Are you watching?" A pause. "I did it." It wasn't a boast. It was a confession. The weight of the secret, the months of training in a hidden ring, the lies she had to tell her own family to protect this one moment, it all came pouring out. This wasn't about the company. It wasn't about the fans. Not really. It was about proving something to herself, to the person she was when she left, broken and bitter. She had to know if that fire still burned. The roar of the crowd had given her the answer, but as she hung up, a new, heavier realization set in. The fire was back, but now it threatened to consume her all over again. The following week, the company had no choice. They leaned in. The entire show was built around one question: why? The Titan was in the ring, demanding answers, demanding respect, her voice cracking with the insecurity of a reign that now felt illegitimate. And then, the music hit again. This time it was expected. The pop was loud, but the tension was louder. The icon walked to the ring, purposeful. She finally took the microphone. The world waited for the challenge. For the inevitable, "I want my title back." But the words that came out were not what anyone expected. "I didn't come back for this," she said, gesturing to the championship. "I didn't come back for you." She turned her gaze from the champion and looked directly into the hard cam. She wasn't speaking to the Titan. She was speaking to the machine. "I came back," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "because you didn't let me leave. You didn't give me a goodbye. You took my last match, my last moment, and you buried it because I wouldn't sign your paper," she explained. The burnout was a lie. The injury was real, but the silence was forced. She came back to take control of her own ending. It wasn't a return. It was an epilogue. And here is the truth that the cameras never caught, the twist that redefines the entire story. The shocking return wasn't a rogue operation at all. It was a phantom operation, known by only two people: the icon and the Titan. The backstage panic from the producers? That was real. The boss's fury? Absolutely genuine. But the incident had been meticulously planned for months by the two women who mattered most. The icon had contacted the Titan not as a rival, but as a predecessor. She explained her pain, her need to write her own final chapter. And the Titan, the champion who supposedly lived in her shadow, was the one who agreed. She was the one who found a way to smuggle her into the arena. She was the one who knew exactly when the lights would cut. The shock on the Titan's face wasn't fear. It was the profound, terrifying thrill of pulling off the impossible. The return wasn't an attack on the current champion's legacy. It was a gift from it. It was the Titan giving the icon the one thing the company wouldn't: a choice. The shaking camera didn't just capture a return. It captured a secret alliance. It captured the moment the current generation reached back into the past, not to erase it, but to heal it.